Oh, okay. My bad. I thought it was just due at midnight.
It is for you.
Yeah, for me, yeah. I thought everybody's was due at midnight, depending
Yeah,
on your time zone.
I'm okay
Alex,
with
I loved your
not
whistling earlier, though. Just to like
It was good. That was very saintly.
it's beautiful.
My whistle, I was whistling.
You're
Yeah.
going to town, man.
My bad. Was it a good song? I don't even know what I was whistling.
I think it was Beyonce, if I'm not mistaken. Am I getting that right?
Whatever. It was church hymns.
Was it? I probably.
Yeah, I sent you a chat. I sent you a chat saying, "Hey,
Okay.
dude, we can hear you whistling," and then there was no response, and then you left, and the rest of us stayed there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's awesome.
It's all good. I just wanted to, before we heard anything else, over the.
Farley's got your back, man. Farley's got your back.
I appreciate
Happens
that.
on the road stays on the road.
Yeah. All right. Does somebody want to kick us out with a prayer?
Sure, I can say it. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're very grateful for this, the opportunity we have to get together to go over our case discussion for the first of this week, and we pray that we'll be able to have a good discussion, be able to learn some good things and takeaways from this that we can apply to future events in our lives. And we ask that this will go well, and we can also be guided and directed for the rest of this week. And these things we pray in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Anybody have a spiritual thought or anything they want to talk about?
Good, better, best. Never let it rest. Too good is your better, and your better is your best. Amen.
Oh, holy smokes, you laid down right there. Holy smokes, man.
All right, Tony, you're up, man. You do a good
I'm
job of this.
spearheading this one again. You get bonus points for this, man. Okay, we got to get this done in a timely fashion so that we can have the link all posted and everything. So let's aim for like 10:45 or 10:45 here and 11:45 there. Then does that work for you guys?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Even if we do it
Okay.
faster, let's do it fast. That way we've got plenty of time. We know how Alex
Okay.
is link post.
Like maybe 10:30.
Here we go. Opening. Many of our discussions center on understanding success or making crucial decisions. Today we are trying to account for failure. To begin your group discussion, quickly reconstruct the key elements of the CAKE financial business model. Customer value proposition, go-to-market plan, technology and operation strategy, and the cash flow formula. Thoughts on the customer value proposition?
Well, he wanted to create a program where investing could all be managed by one website that could link like all investment bureaus and be able to also create like he's wanting to do almost like a Facebook style investing where you could work with your friends and family and share your investing secrets and tips and stock, things that you've been doing so that you could have this community almost of a website to help everybody be the awesome financial people they would want to be.
Wow. I think that was the initial premise. I think he also wanted to utilize the data and the performance from all the different investors. So instead of having an analyst by an individual like actually crunching away on numbers and saying, oh, this will be a good stock, he wanted to create a group think, the high performing group think, kind of an index as well. So groupthink analysis is what I kind of coined it as.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I saw was that they didn't really have a clear value proposition.
Yeah.
That's what he came on and hired on. These guys didn't know what they were trying to do. I mean, they had an idea, and they got some people to back them, but they didn't know how to make the product work.
I think you're right. It just wasn't, I don't think it was a proven value proposition. I mean, like we had the question in our own analysis that asked about whether or not it was a what was the word it used? A promising opportunity. And like I couldn't just say no because, you know, there was some merit to the idea, but at the same time, he just didn't do what was necessary to prove the idea. There was no proof of concept. I mean, he was using statistics that were just secondary research. He didn't do it himself. I mean, and if you look on one of those exhibits, the one that talks about how people turn to their families and friends for financial advice, that wasn't even specifically investors, and it wasn't even Americans. It came out of Europe. It was a European study from European consumers, and so it wasn't even a poll of their target market. And I mean, they didn't even do research on their target market either. So it was a good idea, but was there a real promise to it? I have to lean towards the side of no, just because there was no proof of concept there.
Right.
Well,
My
at the
favorite.
go ahead.
Sorry, I was just I wrote down my favorite quote from this case study, and it says, "We should have figured out what consumers or businesses were willing to pay earlier in the cycle."
Right?
I mean, yeah,
I laugh.
This guy went to Harvard.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think he went to like the sorority part of Harvard, the fraternity part of Harvard.
you know, it was also, if I can add one other thing in there too, like even just there was a few quotes in there that it's like,
Yeah.
dude, what is wrong with you? Like, he had what was the other one? I was trying to pull out the computer's just being super slow. But I think he put in there, it was something along the lines of like, when you rely, it's talking about him relying on bigger businesses in order to succeed.
Correct.
It's like whenever you do that, it just gets rough. And it's like, no, duh, dude. I mean, you're basically relying on these guys for everything. You're just kind of just putting along with these guys. I don't know. This case ticked me off compared to the Rent the Runway. You put those girls in charge. Let's get those girls in here.
Yeah, that's why I thought this was promising, because if it would have been someone else, they would have done a lot better.
Oh yeah.
I when I got done with the case, I was like, I think that'd be a really good idea. Like,
Yeah.
I'd be interested in
Yeah.
like running with the idea. But the thing is like, you know, even though like his value proposition was this group think, like, you know, just social media, whatever. At what point in the case did he actually talk about developing a social media and encouraging social media other than having the ability to link with other people? Like, what encouragement was there to actually encourage that? Like, and their interface, like there was, as far as I could tell, they never even mentioned the interface as far as being able to like, you know, message people and like communicate in a like blog format or even a Facebook feed type format. There's none of that, you know.
Well, I thought he's like, in retrospect, dudes pretty much don't want to share with each other. And I'm like, yeah.
Come on, man. You're a dude yourself.
I know.
But see, I think that was also a cop out on his part, because I don't think that was necessarily true.
Yeah.
You know, there's investment guilds all over the country, investment clubs. Like, people share all the time, and it's just a matter of whether you get them involved in a way that, you know, like the thought I had. I mean, this is kind of getting into other things, but like, if he'd like, as soon as you logged in and created an account, like you had main groups to go into and you had competitions, so people were like competing or whatever. That appeals to, you know, the male investor that's like, yeah, I'm gonna be the top dog, you know, like, and you start doing that, people are gonna start talking more. And you know, the fact is like, I mean, I've got other like specific like body space, you know, it's about lifting weights and whatnot. Like, I only think I know one person like personally on my whole list of friends, because that's not how I'm going to gain friends that way. It's because I interact with other people that I have no idea who they are. And it was based on the premise it was friends and family. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, my family
No,
I think
I-
he needed to.
comes the money.
No, I agree. That was my thought too. Is that he added nothing, no value to people that are already trading. I mean, they already have, most people already have an investment strategy. So I mean, by them sharing their information, I didn't think he added much value there. The other thought that I had was that when he said men are not willing to share, I think that's half true. I think men are more willing to share their gains, but not their losses.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Well, I wonder about the validity of one of the statements in the case where it said that men view trading as a zero-sum game, where if somebody else is gaining, they're losing. Like you said, is it? I have to scroll over your name. Parley, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Parley. I was gonna say Presley for some reason. Anyways, you bring up a good point. You know, it was just another untested theory. So it could be a cop out. There may be some truth to it, but I see some merit to it. But it just goes to show, how many times in this case you saw that he just didn't do his research to see what the root cause of a problem was. Because I could see that. I could see it from his point of view and say, well, maybe people don't want to have their trading information to just everybody out there who's a part of this social network. But at the same time, you're right. There are, there's guilds and there's clubs and organizations that do that. So I guess just kind of another proof of the fact that he wasn't looking into things like he should have been.
Yep.
Okay, let's touch on these other points really quick. The go-to market plan. He mentioned in the case that he potentially went to investors too soon. And then there's the whole deal with the TechCrunch 40 as well. What do you guys think about that?
I think that Tech 40 thing made them jump in way too fast, and they released something that it wasn't ready. And even when he says in retrospect, the focus groups weren't very helpful because they didn't even have something to give the focus group to see if they liked it or not. They're basically like, hey, would this be cool? And they're like, yeah, that would be really cool. It's like, well, yeah, it sounds good, but until you actually have it in front of you to actually try it. And like, oh, forget the focus group. We're just going to take it straight to this competition so that we can get the traction that we want. I just think, I don't know. I think that their go-to-market plan, it sounded like they were going to do it well, and then they got sidetracked by the competition thing that really, I think, did not help them at all.
There were so many demises in this case. Like, there were so many things that put him in a complete terrible situation. Honestly, like I'm also, something that really like pushed me in the wrong direction was how you bring this group in, you're like, okay, this is not my vision. This is not what I wanted. You're all fired. Like, holy smokes, man. Like, let's tweak things here and there. I feel like that plan, I don't know. This whole case, man.
Yeah, I think on his go-to-market plan, which kind of ties over into his technology and operations stuff, I think one of the things that really shot him in the foot was he had an opportunity to utilize an existing company, the Yodlee.
Yeah.
That was already tied into 80 plus investors, and brokerage accounts, and they'd already like created that will. They'd already like made everything happen there, and it was going to cost, I think, up to 20 cents or 25 cents per account. Yeah, I mean, it was like 5 to 25 depending on the account. And the fact is that means that if they get a $99 per year or subscription, that you're talking about, somebody would have to have 400 accounts before that was like, I mean, that's you don't want to have all your expenses in there, but I mean, just saying that's a minor cost, because most of your investors are going to have one or two brokerages. That's a minor cost per customer, and all the time they spent designing, all the time they spent getting ready to go to market was all trying to recreate the will, so that when they went to, they had this back end data. And the fact is the only thing that was down, there was a problem is that, hey, they could only go back 90 days.
Yeah.
But the thing is if I take the 90 days now and a month later I take the next, I still go back 90 days from then. All I got to do is start recording that data as I pull it. And eventually I have, a year from now, I've got 12 months worth of data. And then 2 years from now, I got 2 years worth of data. So yeah, that individual investor, I only get 90 days initially, but it's the instant it starts, it builds. But he could have just taken that will that was already created and started building, basically going to the customers now, and all that time and money that was spent trying to build that back in was not even a factor. He could have been selling the product to the customer immediately with what they had. I don't know. That's just my thoughts.
No, I agree.
Thing.
Sorry, Justin.
Go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
Well, like you were saying, Justin, before, I feel like that TechCrunch 40 brought them to market way too soon, and they came to market focusing on the wrong things. They focused so much on that social network aspect of things that they came to market after TechCrunch 40 with only 12 firms integrated. And that's what people actually cared about. That was something that could actually attract more users. But because they were so focused on that and so focused on coming to the market so soon, they came with only 12 investors. And later on, they added a bunch more when they actually found out that that's more what people cared about. But like you were saying, Connor, it was just frustrating to read. It was just like, man.
It literally, and if I can just piggyback, Justin, I'm sorry, really quick. I literally, the entire case was, okay, I'd rather much have these two girls who had no experience in this even, and I'd bring them right into this because they had such a great, and I think honestly, and Justin, like I said, I'm coming back to you, buddy, but
you're good. We're saying the same thing.
Going back into number 4, in recreating that business model, if I could choose, like if I had a stack of cards of let's be honest, we all had Pokemon cards. Let's be honest. Every single, I don't care how old you were, you had them. You had the binder, you had it. I know you did. My holographic cards, the first 2 on there are the 2 girls. I'd take those and I'd put them right into this business model. And I'd say, hey, listen, I want you to plan out exactly what, you just plan it all out. Because listen, you did a phenomenal job. In my personal opinion, as far as case studies are aware, I know we're only 2 weeks into this thing, but take the wheel. Come on. Guy drove me nuts, man. Justin, take it before I start swearing.
No, I'm same boat. Like I was thinking the same exact thing you were just saying. That this guy, he was like, he was giving the golden goose and just killed the dang thing. So it was just, it was very interesting to read.
Did you guys ever take a consumer behavior class?
No, but I think you're going to tell us about it.
Well, either that or a marketing research class.
You're going to save us $500 here, Tony.
Yeah, buddy.
I definitely wouldn't say that. But those classes, this is the kind of thing you talk about, how important it is. And seriously, my market research class was a half semester class. And in a half semester, I learned the importance of doing things so much differently than Carpenter did it. Yeah. You've got to get your numbers right. You've got to, and it's so inexpensive compared to, the alternative of going down this path that you don't actually have any proof is going to work. Throw some surveys out there. They did some focus groups, but like you said, the focus groups weren't even focused specifically on products. They were just kind of general. They should have been way more specific about, hey, would you be willing to share all of your investing information on social media? Just specific questions targeted towards, figuring out if people even wanted this.
Okay.
And like I said, that was a half semester class where you learn the importance of doing that.
I'm going to take that. I just crunched some numbers really quick. Okay. You just saved us. You could have saved Carpenter $158,800 from Harvard Business School, a total MBA cost, right there, in just half a semester at BYU Idaho. All you have to do is get baptized,
quality education,
and let's do this. Come on.
But so just to throw a little nook in here, though, at the same time, how many of us, we're sitting here laughing at this, but how many of us have raised $9 million to pursue
That's a
it?
good
Oh, yeah.
So,
It's not,
Good
Oh,
point.
you haven't done it yet?
well, you doubting
No.
me? Are you doubting me? Is that it? Guys, as soon as
I'm just saying, like,
I'm gonna be on Forbes magazine.
we haven't walked that path yet. That's all I'm saying.
Honestly, that's what I thought about the whole case I was reading. Was I wish they wouldn't have told us in the beginning in the summary that he had sold it and that it didn't work. Because
Yeah.
I wonder if I would have had a different outlook.
That's a fair question.
I mean, usually they don't flat out tell you that this case is a failure. Then go talk about it.
Well, I guess
usually they leave it up to you for interpretation.
this is more of a
Yeah.
problem case than a decision case.
Yeah.
Which was kind of weird for me in my analysis, actually, because almost all of the cases I've done in the past have been decision cases, and then all of a sudden, like you said, they just give you the answer, what happened, and then it's more about finding out why. Let's see, we've touched on 4 a little bit. No, I think we hit it pretty good.
Yeah.
I think
We're
we
still-
did.
So are we all kind of in agreement that from the beginning it was a very troubling business model?
Yeah, because of Carpenter, it was a troubling business. Let's be honest.
So, Justin, would you say then that did the social networking side of the company have merit?
Honestly, it sounded good. Like if I would have been in a focus group, I probably would have thought, you know what, that sounds pretty cool. But then, if you think, a lot of people don't want to share their stock tips, with just everybody. And if you do, I think, like we said before, you kind of join other groups for that are more like, hey, I want to do this kind of investing. So I think if you could have maybe like, hey, welcome to Cake. What kind of investor are you? And what kind of group would you like to see? But instead, it was so back end that nobody really knew it was there. So I think it did have potential, but the delivery was horrible.
I concur.
Okay, so I want to tag on what Justin is talking about here. Facebook started 2004, right? So we're just starting this trend. We're about 4 or 5 years into this.
Dude,
As far
MySpace.
as, yeah, we weren't gonna bring that up. Don't bring up that, okay? Don't go sharing your URL there, buddy. So you have at least 5 years, and where he talked about that in case where you have these social platforms, but they're just beginning, right? Think if he would have not gone into this, because he had another, I think at the very beginning case it said he had something else that he could have done. I would have taken that. I would have rolled this over a little bit more. I know you want to jump into it, but man, this was a big, I don't think for the benefit of the doubt, I don't think he realized how big this was really going to be. To be honest, I don't think he really realized.
Didn't help at all either.
Say it again.
The market tanking, that didn't help him. I mean, if the
Yeah,
market
that's a
really
good
tanked,
point.
he probably would have had some more time to fine tune it. But when that happened, a lot of the people he was hoping to work with and to partner with, they're like, no, or they're like going out of business.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, that's all I gotta say. I'm done.
Well, no, that's interesting
I'm
because a lot of, I thought this as I read that part of the case where they go into the market crash and everything kind of turns around. A lot of CEOs, like if you've ever read the book Level 5 Leadership, they mention luck. Just luck and market conditions being a big factor in their success. And so I really had to feel for the guy at that point in the case for that he had things going for him and it almost looked like he was going to get things turned around when all of a sudden, man, it just, it went a completely different direction. He lost all of these guys who had potential interest. So that was just rough, man.
yeah, it turned a shaky scenario into a scenario that had no chance.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, let's hit question 5. Discuss Stephen's approach to the opportunity. Try to understand what, if anything, Stephen could have done differently that may have produced a better outcome.
I think we really hit this pretty well already.
I think you're right there. On page 3, Stephen says.
So there's some things there though that I think we didn't pull out.
Okay.
Did you, I'm sure everyone looked at the appendixes, but did you guys see how good the Cake Dex was?
Yeah.
Like when you start looking at those numbers, that over the period of time, their cake dex index, again, my coin for this would be groupthink analysis, as opposed to like technical analysis or the other type of analysis that we are typically used. Is he basically taking good investors and he's just taking the best ones and saying, hey, this is what we say should be happening. But 250 something % increase over the other performers, he had something. I mean, that's like, you know, I mean, it was 4 to 5 times the amount of return over the given period of time that even, you know, the Dow or the NASDAQ were able to create. I mean, I mean, like I said, he had something, and if he had started with something, you know, that he had fine-tuned that a little bit earlier, you know, I think he could have had a good, you know, the subscription was kind of getting there, but at that point he had burned all his cash.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, he was done before he even got started, but like, you know, he had something that was really good, and it came from, it didn't even need the social element, because literally everybody could have been in their own account without any social interaction, and that would have given them the data feed that they needed to build that cake dex.
Well, and I think if he would came up with a fee-based system right off the bat, people would have been more than happy to pay it because of the potential that it had. Waiting, as long as he waited, by the time he did it, it was like trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. You know, it's just there was no time. It was too late.
Yeah, he was trying to go too big, and that, you know, that's what I was going to say with Connor. He said, you know, you were talking about how like he didn't see the big picture, how big it was. I think part of the problem was he saw the big picture, or at least most of the big picture, and he didn't have a single bridge to get to that big picture. Like, you know, every single one of these, the commentaries were like, yeah, if this gets to scale, it'll be awesome.
Right.
But he never really built an avenue to get to scale. He was just trying to build full-size scale. The back end, I don't know if I mentioned that the last time. One of the problems is everyone focused on the back end and not on the front end. And he did that, just that. He was totally focused on that back end, making that back end.
Well, and the investors obviously saw value because they kept giving him money. So there was definitely a program there that was viable and was going to make people money.
Yep.
And if I can, like I said, I want to go back to that benefit of the doubt for him. He'd also talked about in the case, he said, if you could do it, like if you could do this again, how do you feel? And he was like, I felt like I was ambitious. I don't know if I was ambitious enough. And to your point, Parley, I think that avenue of getting to that thing that was going to coin it for him. I mean, you make a great point with the cake dex or cake index, whatever it's called. It is. I mean, it looked phenomenal. But getting to it quicker and at the very beginning stages, no, it's difficult. I don't know. That's you bring up a really good point though.
I think we're kind of getting into the last bullet point of question 5. Coming up with a list of ways that Steven's approach is different from Rent the Runway, Dropbox, and Mint. What you were saying, Connor, made me think of that because I feel like with Rent the Runway, what happened is they had an idea, and it wasn't, in the beginning, it wasn't really what it needed to be. They had to pivot several times, and they were able to do that successfully, and they were able to do it in a timely manner. Dropbox, I feel like Dropbox was much closer to like the right idea in the beginning, if you know what I mean. They, you know, what it was conceptualized as and what it came out as were two very similar things. But at the same time, that was something that he could look at, and he knew there was going to be a demand for it because everybody who worked on 2 computers could use it. And so I feel like that's the big difference is Carpenter Steven, he needed to pivot, and he pivoted slowly, and his idea wasn't like Dropbox, and it needed changing, and he didn't change it in time. And so he kind of missed on both fronts there. Not only did he not have the right idea in the beginning exactly, he didn't pivot fast enough like they did in the Rent the Runway case.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I like how you finished that there. Didn't pivot fast enough because he did pivot towards the end. The last couple of months were his most successful. So if you would have made that pivot quicker, I mean, if you would have done the research quicker and known that, hey, this is what we got, you know, cake dex is where it's at. You know, let's start making some money. I mean, at that point, they said it was the best 2 months of their whole time they would work together. So, I mean, I think he was learning. I think he's going to have great potential, but he needed to pivot quicker. Like you said.
So, Alex, on that same bullet point, the third bullet point of question 5 says, how do you know which assumption to test first? I think you were kind of hitting that. What are your thoughts on that? How do you know which assumption is the one that you need to test first?
I think that's just going to come with the market. I mean, you're talking about 3 different markets. Well, Mint's not a different market, but I mean, you got to know what market you're going into. I think he's going to have a lot better opportunity his second go around than his first because of the things that he's learned. And just like you said there, and at the end of it, Silicon Valley's, it gives second chances because it's so hard to make it on your first attempt.
I think also
he
didn't have the right people in the right seat, so to speak. Like he waited too long to get someone in there to say, hey, look, you need to pivot, and you need to pivot now.
Yeah.
So, because he didn't know any better. And he even hired this big, huge firm to try to find the right person. By the time he did, it was too late.
What were your thoughts, Parley?
I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, as far as having the right people, he didn't ever hire anybody that was good at social media marketing or like social media. Like I said, it was just like an afterthought. It was the whole premise of the idea, and it was an afterthought. There was never, a specialist that was hired for that specific thing. But I think going back to the question here, what assumptions do you want to test first? And I think you want to test the basic foundation of your those are the things that you want to actually I don't really need to go and like in this case, do I need to test what my partner's really going to think? I mean, that might be something that's important, but the thing that's really critical is my value position, my customer segments. Like that's the stuff that really needs to be worked out, and at that point, the other stuff I can work on the assumptions there, but I got to start with those other ones. And I don't think he did. You're talking about the data that was not even related, but if you look at the questions, I don't think he really asked anybody about like, hey, do you have a problem sharing your investment ideas?
Right.
Like the security elements of that, they never talked about it. Like, what kind of risks would he have as far as data security and like privacy and all of that kind of stuff? That's there was no questions about that to actual investors. Like, hey, what do you think about this? How involved are you in social media? Hey, yeah, you want to go and I trust my family members more than I do a brokerage account. But like, did you even ask me if I'd be willing to take advice from my family members in this regard? So he didn't ever test the foundational principles of his idea. He tested everything around it and assumed that his assumptions were correct.
And that was one of 3 of the pillars of his revenue stream. Was the revenue coming from a subscription service to that social media aspect of the company. So I think you're right. You just have to, the complimentary reading called them the deal killer risks. I think those are definitely the ones you've got to start with. Those are the first things you need to test. So, and he didn't do it. Poor guy. Okay, let's go to 6 here. Close to finishing up. As a group, identify the main reason for cake's failure. So, not proximate causes, but root causes here. What do we think? Let's put it as eloquently as we can in one sentence.
Assumptions, market research, pivot. I mean, it's basically he put the cart before the horse. He spent too much money developing without having everything in ducks in a row before he did so. I mean, you can spend a lot of money making something that nobody wants, and it's not that nobody wanted it, but by the time he got to where they wanted it, he had already spent all his money.
I guess he didn't he didn't properly manage the risks that would determine the success of his company.
Well, he didn't. He also didn't set up his employee base as a means that would help his company succeed. He was trying to take it all on himself and just hire people he thought would be good instead of getting the right people to actually, you know, like probably was saying, you know, he wanted social media, but he didn't even bring in a social media specialist. You know, he had all these ideas, but he wasn't forward thinking enough to bring people in who wanted to fulfill the ideas
Right.
and could. It's just, I think it all comes down to is just improper planning in the proper areas. He planned a lot, but not where he should have.
Yeah. I mean, because he had talented people on his staff, but
Yeah.
I guess just not the right people in the right seats.
He couldn't go from good to great.
That's right.
That's another good point.
One of the things that I took away from it was that he was burned out. He was unhappy.
Oh yeah.
And that's going to be a direct correlation of how much effort you're putting behind it. You know, he said that Take Financial represented a lonely couple of years. I mean, anybody in that situation, I mean, it's going to wear on you no matter what you're doing. If you're not happy doing what you're doing, whether you're successful or unsuccessful, I don't think it would have mattered to his overall well-being. So I think that was one of the main things for him as well. I mean, he was just burned out with it.
I think that I want to go back to my point and to what Parley and I kind of went back and forth as far as with the big picture. I honestly think that he didn't look at that and analyze that well enough to realize, okay, this is going to take a lot more than what I'm thinking it's going to take. Now, I know I can say that at the very end, but preparation is so key. If that's the one sentence, preparation in everything is so key. And I think that was one thing that I think he was ambitious and was just pulled the trigger a little bit too quick. I think we just give it a little more time.
Okay, are we ready to do a summary then?
Let's do it.
What was the low cost experiment you guys felt he could have done?
Oh, I think surveys and focus groups that focus specifically on the value proposition, figuring out whether or not there was an actual market for people to come together in a social network and publicly share their investment information.
I think he probably could, for not very much, also created a test website that could have given people a feel of what it was. That then they were going, you know, I really don't like that. I don't think we need it. You know,
Right.
or hey, this is awesome. No, I think he could have spent some money in the beginning to save a ton of money in the end.
Yep.
I think he should have gone with his beta versions that he was going to do.
I know. When he said
I agree
when
with
they
that.
announced that thing. Oh, sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
He flew too close to the sun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if they would have gone with the beta, it probably could have saved them a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
I think also he could have made that low cost experiment. You know, we talked about making that website. He could have. I mean, I'm not going to say a blog because you know that would be not necessarily what he's wanting to achieve. But he could have made that website interface pretty simply.
Yep.
And utilized that Yodlee data. And that element of it would have cost, it would have probably cost more per customer in the long run if he stayed with that. But initially, each customer would have been, 25 cents a month or something like that. And he'd have had all the data. He'd been able to do that, that testing that he needed to test without, all the development that went into building all those other things that, he didn't need to begin with. So he could have made his experiment a lot cheaper to get where he ended up, but doing it right at the beginning without all the cost. I don't know, just my 2 cents on that, but if somebody's already created a will, recreating it
Yep.
again because you want it to do it yourself is often a very bad idea.
I think honestly as well that summarizes it pretty well. And I'm not saying that just for the sake of time, but that right there, I think out of everything that we have talked about, that is exactly it. He was trying to recreate something when it was already done.
Yeah.
At least that element of it was already done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, Parley, he could have been like, hey, we can utilize their information, and as we grow, we'll get the data that we want by taking that 6 months or 90 days of data and continually building it to create the data field that we want. So,
Yeah. And then when he hits critical mass, make their own data, integrations.
Yeah.
But
he could have used that as training wheels until he finally could ride his bike, but instead he just wanted to jump on and go downhill biking. So
The analogies here are on point tonight, guys.
crash and burn.
Oh man.
Okay, let's wrap it up with a summary then. I guess I'll start. Just as a quick summary, I guess, is the reason I think ultimately that Steven failed with this venture was he failed to manage the risks that were most important to the success of his company. He should have done the research early on to figure out that people weren't actually interested in a social network type of investment community. It would have been so simple, very cost effective, and it could have saved him a lot of time. The fact that he didn't do that led to several problems down the road. It led to focus in the wrong places, and it all went awry from there.
I'll go next. So I think that he should have stuck to his game plan, stuck with the beta versions, and done that before he went to the Tech Expo. I think the Tech Expo rushed him too much. I also think that he should have gone with Yodlee and tested his product prior to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars making its own back end for the software. There's no reason why he couldn't have done that later once the company was already successful. After that, I think the market hurt him, but I think that by the time that he sold the company, he was done with it. He was unhappy with where he was at, and he needed to get out of the company because he was unhappy. And I don't think you could ever be successful when you're unhappy. That's it.
I think just to kind of piggyback along with that, market hurt him. I think there's a lot of things that set him back. I think a little bit more of I know that a little bit more preparation on his part at the very beginning could have maybe tweaked a little bit. I know we talked about being lucky. I know there's factors. I know there's a lot of things that go into it other than that. But honestly, looking at that and analyzing 5-year, 10-year goals, and then realizing, okay, this might be a little bit bigger than I realized, and then actually going through and sticking to your steps along the way, no matter what happens. I know a lot of it plays, and it's a lot of variables and a lot out of his control at some points, but just bummed out. It was a really cool business model. Really cool business model.
I guess I can go. So essentially, I kind of shared most of my thoughts on there. I agree. He should have used Yodlee to begin with. I think while it seems like the social media side of things was a fail, I don't know that it actually was or would have been had it been approached differently. I think the social media interaction would have required a little bit more input and management from their side to get and build that element of it. But I think the real key that ended up being was that cake index, and that's what they needed to kind of focus on as far as building revenue initially. And I think the other social media side of things would have happened, but that's basically my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I feel that he had a decent plan in place in the beginning. He let his views get taken by the glory that could have came with this tech conference that he was going to. I think if he would have spent a little more time and came up with a test website to take to these focus groups so they could get a feel for it, so he could actually truly see what his customers wanted instead of what he thought they wanted. I think also that he should have spent the time getting the right people in place on his team to actually give him the insight of how to make this idea he has a true success. I think the market also played a huge part in his failure. I think it was just bad luck on some of it that the market tanked at the time it did. I wonder if maybe if he would have been planning more, if that market would have crashed, it would have given him some more time to plan, and then he could have came out strong when the market was making a comeback. I think his desire to just hit that tech conference, it really clouded his vision. And I think it was just downhill from there. And so that prevented him from having the ability to really see what was needed, because his sights were set on something that really wasn't important, and it didn't even really give him the outcome that he wanted in the end anyway. I think he had a good plan. He had a good business model. It had a great opportunity for success, and the delivery just wasn't there.
Good job this week,
Amen.
boys.
Any final thoughts?
Alex, you better be quick, buddy.
Yeah, I'll do it as quick as I can.
Okay.
All right, guys. I'll stop it. I'll
All
send
right,
it out to you.
It's good, guys.
See you
Have a good
guys.
night.
Good night.
So
Good night. Yeah.
Saturday night.